My husband and sister were laughing while my daughter lay dying. "Holly had a good run," he smirked. "We need that money for my son with your sister." I slapped him, then made one phone call that changed everything. "Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. The only sound in the world was the rhythmic, terrifying beep of the heart monitor. It was a mechanical countdown that felt like a bomb ticking inside my chest. My 8-year-old daughter, Holly, lay on the hospital bed, looking so small against the sterile white sheets. Her skin was translucent, her breathing shallow and aided by a tube that looked too large for her tiny face. I stood there, gripping the metal rail of the bed until my knuckles turned white, praying to a god I hadn't spoken to in years. The emergency room doctor, a man named Dr. Eris with tired eyes and a compassionate but firm demeanor, stood across from me. He held a clipboard like it was a shield. "Mrs. Harper, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Dr. Eris said, his voice cutting through the fog of my panic. "The CT scan confirms a severe subdural hematoma. The pressure inside Holly's skull is increasing rapidly. We need to perform a decompressive craniectomy immediately to relieve that pressure. If we don't operate within the next hour, the damage will be irreversible. Or worse." I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving me cold and dizzy. "Do it," I gasped, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "Please, doctor, just do whatever you have to do. Save my baby." "That's the problem, Mrs. Harper," he said, glancing over my shoulder at the man leaning against the wall, my husband, Grant. "We've been trying to process your admission, but your primary insurance policy has been flagged as inactive due to missed premiums. Because this is a specialized neurosurgical procedure involving an outside team, the hospital policy requires a 50% deposit upfront for uninsured patients. We need $50,000, Meredith. We need it now." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Inactive? Missed premiums? That was impossible. I handled the household budget for years, but 6 months ago, Grant insisted on taking over the finances. He said I was working too hard, that he wanted to burden share. I spun around to face him. Grant was leaning against the peeling beige wall of the ER, scrolling through his phone with a detached expression, as if he were waiting for an oil change rather than his daughter's brain surgery. He was wearing his bespoke Italian suit, looking every bit the successful investment banker he pretended to be. "Grant!" I screamed, the sound raw and jagged. "Did you hear him? Put down the phone. Why is the insurance inactive? Give him the credit card. Pay the deposit. Now!" Grant didn't flinch. He slowly slid his phone into his pocket and looked at me with eyes that were terrifyingly empty. "We don't have it, Meredith," he said flatly. "What do you mean we don't have it?" I stepped closer, my hands shaking. "We have the savings account. We have the emergency fund. We have Holly's college fund. That's over $200,000, Grant. Just transfer it." He sighed, a sound of annoyance rather than grief. "The market turned, Meredith. I made some calls. Leveraged some positions. It's gone. The accounts are empty." My knees gave out. I would have hit the floor if I hadn't grabbed the back of a plastic chair. Empty? 10 years of my bonuses, my late nights, my sacrifices, gone? But before I could process the magnitude of his theft, the automatic doors of the ER slid open. The clicking of high heels on linoleum echoed through the quiet hallway. My mother, Lorraine, and my younger sister, Kendra, sashayed into the room. They looked like they were arriving at a gala. Lorraine was draped in a new mink coat that smelled of expensive perfume and cold air. Around her neck sat a diamond necklace so large and ostentatious it caught the fluorescent hospital lights and sent blinding sparkles dancing across the room, a necklace I had never seen before. Kendra was right beside her, popping pink bubblegum, clutching a designer handbag that cost more than my first car. She looked bored. "Oh, stop crying, Meredith," Lorraine said as she approached, her voice dripping with that familiar disdain. "You always were so dramatic. You're embarrassing us in front of the staff." "Mom," I choked out, pointing at the necklace. "Holly is dying. She needs surgery right now. Grant says we have no money, but that necklace. That's new. Is that real?" Lorraine clutched the diamonds protectively, her manicured fingers curling over the stones. "Of course it's real. It's an investment piece, Meredith. A family heirloom I purchased for the future." "Sell it," I begged, grabbing her fur coat. "Mom, please. Return it. Pawn it. I don't care. I need $50,000 to save your granddaughter's life." Lorraine pulled away from me as if I were contagious. "Don't be ridiculous. You can't return custom jewelry. Besides, Holly has always been a sickly child. Is it really wise to bankrupt the entire family for a procedure with no guarantees? You have to think about the living, Meredith." The cruelty of her words took my breath away. But then Kendra chimed in, her voice light and airy. "Yeah, sis," Kendra said, examining her nails. "Plus, we need to think about the future of the family name. We need resources for the healthy ones. Like Jared. And the new one." I froze. The room went silent. Even the beep of the heart monitor seemed to fade into the background. "What new one?" I whispered. Kendra smirked. She casually dropped her heavy handbag onto the waiting room chair. As she did, the clasp popped open, and a small white plastic stick tumbled out, clattering loudly on the floor. It spun and came to a stop at my feet. A pregnancy test. 2 distinct pink lines. "Oops," Kendra giggled, bending down to retrieve it, but not before the image was burned into my retinas. "I'm pregnant, Meredith. And since Grant is the only man around who actually takes care of us, well, let's just say we're keeping it in the family." I looked at Grant. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Kendra, and for the first time all night, there was warmth in his eyes. A sick, twisted pride. "We're having a boy, Meredith," Grant said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "A son. Someone to carry on the legacy. We need that money for him. Holly, she had a good run." The world stopped. The betrayal wasn't just a knife in my back, it was a nuclear explosion. They weren't just neglecting my daughter, they were actively sacrificing her. They were letting my little girl die on a gurney to fund a life for my husband's illegitimate child with my own sister. The weeping mother died in that moment. The dutiful daughter turned to ash. Something cold and hard, like forged steel, took their place. I walked up to Grant. He opened his mouth, probably to spew more gaslighting nonsense, but I didn't let him. I pulled my hand back and swung with every ounce of rage, betrayal, and motherly instinct I possessed. Smack! The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet ER. Grant's head snapped back. He stumbled, clutching his cheek, eyes wide with shock. A red handprint bloomed instantly on his face. I turned to Lorraine and Kendra. They huddled together, mouths agape. "You monsters," I hissed, my voice low, trembling not with fear, but with the effort to keep from killing them with my bare hands. "You wear my stolen money around your neck while my daughter fights for breath? You carry my husband's bastard and laugh at my child's grave? Meredith!" Lorraine shrieked. "You are out of the will." I stepped closer, forcing them back against the wall. "Listen to me. I will find the money. I will sell my soul to the devil if I have to. But if my daughter doesn't make it, if she loses this fight because of your greed, I will not just divorce you. I will not just disown you. I will burn your entire world to the ground. I will leave you with nothing but the clothes on your backs and the rot in your souls. I turned my back on them, pulling out my phone. My fingers flew across the screen, dialing the one number I swore I'd never use. To understand why I didn't see the knife coming until it was buried in my spine, you have to understand the soil in which I grew up. In the garden of my mother's life, Kendra was the rose, and I was the gardener. I wasn't there to be admired, I was there to prune, water, and ensure the rose had enough light, even if it meant I stood in the shadow. My mother, Lorraine, was a former beauty queen who never quite got over the fact that she aged. When I was born, I was a disappointment. I looked like my father, serious, dark-haired, and quiet. My father left when I was 5. I remember the day he walked out. He packed a single suitcase while Lorraine screamed at him about credit card bills and lifestyle maintenance. Before he got into his car, he looked at me through the window. He didn't wave. He just looked sad. Lorraine turned to me that day, mascara running down her cheeks, and said, "This is your fault, Meredith. You were too needy. You exhausted him." I was 5. I believed her. 10 years later, Kendra was born. My mother had remarried a wealthy older man who died shortly after, leaving just enough insurance money to spoil Kendra rotten. Kendra was everything I wasn't: blonde, bubbly, manipulative, and a mirror image of Lorraine. From the moment Kendra could talk, I became invisible. I was the built-in babysitter, the tutor, the maid. I remember the day I turned 18 vividly. It was a humid Tuesday in July. I had spent 4 years studying until my vision blurred, working double shifts at a greasy spoon diner called the Rusty Fork to save for college applications. My dream was architecture. I wanted to build structures that were safe, permanent, and unbreakable, everything my home wasn't. A thick, cream-colored envelope arrived in the mail. My hands shook as I tore it open. It was an acceptance letter to a prestigious architecture program in Chicago, complete with a full tuition scholarship. It was my golden ticket. It was my escape pod. I ran into the kitchen, waving the letter, my heart pounding with a joy I hadn't felt in years. "Mom! Look! I got in! Full ride to Chicago!" Lorraine was sitting at the granite island, filing her nails. The dust settled on the counter I had just scrubbed that morning. She didn't look up. "That's nice, Meredith," she said, her tone bored. "But we need to have a family meeting." My stomach dropped. Family meeting was code for Meredith needs to sacrifice something. "Kendra got into that private performing arts high school in the city," Lorraine said, blowing on her nails. "The one with the drama program. The tuition is astronomical, Meredith. And she needs a car to get there. It's too far for the bus, and you know how sensitive Kendra is to public transport." I gripped the letter tighter, crumpling the edges. "Okay, that's great for Kendra. But I have a scholarship. I won't cost you anything." Lorraine finally looked up, her eyes cold and calculating. "A scholarship covers tuition, Meredith. Not housing. Not food. Not books. I can't support 2 households. I can't pay for Kendra's dream and your hobby." "Hobby?" I whispered. "This is my future." "Don't be selfish, Meredith," she snapped, slamming her hand on the counter. "Why are you always so selfish? Your sister has real talent. She's going to be a star. You're just book smart. You can go to the community college here. You can keep working at the diner and help pay for Kendra's car insurance." "But Mom, I have savings from the diner." "Those savings are family money," she yelled. "You live under my roof, you eat my food. That money belongs to the household pot. And right now, the pot needs to feed Kendra's future." She stood up and walked over to me, snatching the acceptance letter from my hand. She looked at it for a second, then tossed it into the trash can like it was junk mail. You are the big sister, Meredith. It is your duty to take care of us. If you leave, you're abandoning your family. Do you want to be just like your father? That was the kill shot. The fear of being like the man who abandoned me kept me tethered to them. So, I stayed. I fished the letter out of the trash later that night and cried over it, smoothing out the wrinkles, but I never sent the acceptance. I went to community college. I worked those double shifts. I bought Kendra a red convertible used, and she didn't even say thank you. She just complained that it wasn't a Mercedes. I learned to make myself small so there would be more room for them. I learned that love was transactional. I learned that my value was measured solely by what I could provide. I built a career in interior design not because I wanted to pick out curtains, but because it was the closest I could get to architecture without leaving town. I became successful. I started my own firm. And every time I landed a big client, Lorraine would pat my cheek and say, "Good job, Meredith. Now we can finally afford that vacation to Cabo." I didn't realize it then, but I was grooming myself to be the perfect victim. I was training myself to tolerate a husband who would treat me exactly the way my mother did. I met Grant when I was 28. He walked into my design firm wearing a suit that cost more than my rent, flashing a smile that seemed to promise safety. He introduced himself as a financial consultant for high-net-worth individuals. He said he needed his bachelor pad redesigned to look less like a frat house and more like a home. For a woman who had spent her life being treated like a utility appliance, Grant's attention was intoxicating. He didn't just look at me, he studied me. He asked about my favorite color, cerulean, my coffee order, black, 2 sugars, and my dreams. He brought me flowers for no reason. He opened doors. He made me feel seen. Or at least, I thought he did. Looking back, with the clarity of betrayal, I realized he wasn't studying me for affection, he was assessing me for extraction. He was calculating my net worth, my credit score, and my pliability. We dated for 6 months before he proposed. It was a whirlwind romance, the kind you see in movies, but there were cracks in the foundation from the start, cracks I plastered over with hope. He never seemed to have his wallet when the check came. "Oh, I left it in my gym bag, babe," he'd say with a sheepish, charming grin. Or, "My assets are all tied up in a merger right now. Can you get this? I'll make it up to you." I always got it. I was the provider. It was the role I knew best. When we decided to buy a house, Grant suggested a sprawling colonial in the wealthiest suburb of the city. It was massive, ostentatious, and way over our budget. "It's an investment, Meredith," he insisted, walking through the marble foyer. "It shows clients you're successful. Perception is reality in my business. You need this for your brand." The down payment was astronomical. Grant claimed his money was in offshore accounts for tax purposes and couldn't be touched without a penalty. So, I did something I promised myself I'd never do. I dipped into the secret inheritance my grandmother had left me, the only money Lorraine hadn't managed to sniff out. I paid the entire down payment. I paid the closing costs. But the real gut punch came in the title office. We sat across from the lawyer, a gray-haired man who looked over his spectacles at us. He pushed the deed across the mahogany table. Grant picked up the pen immediately. "Since we're married, it's 50-50 joint tenancy, right, babe?" He smiled, that dazzling smile that made my knees weak. The lawyer paused. "Mrs. Harper, since you are providing 100% of the down payment, we usually recommend a tenancy in common agreement, protecting your initial investment in case of dissolution." Grant's face fell. He looked wounded. Hurt. "Oh. I see. You don't trust me. You think I'm going to leave you?" I panicked. I didn't want to be the selfish one again. I didn't want to ruin the fairy tale. "No, of course not," I said quickly, ignoring the lawyer's warning glance. "Put his name on it." We're partners. And just like that, I handed him half of my life savings. Then there was the wedding. It should have been my day, but Kendra made sure it was hers. She showed up wearing a dress that was pale champagne, basically white. It was tight, revealing, and inappropriate. During the reception, Grant spent more time dancing with Kendra than with me. Lorraine cooed from the sidelines, "Look how well they get along. Grant is such a good big brother." I remember watching them on the dance floor. Grant's hand was a little too low on Kendra's back. Kendra was whispering something in his ear, making him throw his head back and laugh, a laugh he never shared with me. A cold shiver went down my spine, a primal warning. But Grant walked over to me a moment later, kissed my forehead, and said, "You look beautiful, Mrs. Harper." I let the warning fade. I wanted the family. I wanted the illusion. I was building a castle on a swamp, and I was paying for every single brick, unaware that the termites were already eating the frame. The dynamic in my house shifted subtly at first, then violently, about 2 years ago. Kendra, true to form, had married a wealthy tech bro straight out of college, popped out a kid, Jared, and then gotten divorced just as fast because she couldn't stop spending his money on business ventures that were essentially pyramid schemes. She lost the house in the divorce. She had nowhere to go. Naturally, the phone call from Lorraine came within hours of the eviction notice. "Meredith," Lorraine's voice was shrill. "You have that big house with all those empty rooms. It's cruel to let your sister live in a cramped apartment with a child. She needs support. She needs family." I looked at Grant, expecting him to be the voice of reason. We had finally found a rhythm. Holly was 6, things were peaceful. But Grant's eyes lit up with a disturbing intensity. "Of course she should come here," he said, puffing out his chest like a benevolent king. "We have plenty of room. It's the right thing to do. Family helps family." So, Kendra, Lorraine, and Jared moved in. Yes, Lorraine too. She claimed she needed to help Kendra with the baby, but really, she just wanted to live in my luxury zip code rent-free. It wasn't a move-in, it was a hostile takeover. Within a week, the house I had designed, the sanctuary I had paid for, was unrecognizable. Boxes lined the hallways, creating an obstacle course. The smell of Kendra's cheap, cloying vanilla perfume permeated every room. I came home from work one Tuesday to find my home office door locked. This was my space, the room with the drafting table, the natural light, the place where I earned the money that paid the mortgage. I knocked. "Kendra? Why is this door locked?" The door swung open. Kendra was standing there in a ring light's glow, holding a makeup palette. Behind her, my drafting table, a vintage piece I had restored myself, was pushed into the corner, piled high with dirty laundry. My architectural blueprints were on the floor, being used as a mat for her tripod. "Shoo!" she hissed. "I'm filming a Get Ready With Me livestream. I need this room, Meredith. The lighting in the guest room makes me look orange." "You need this room?" I stammered, my blood boiling. "Kendra, this is my office. I work here." Grant walked up behind me, placing a hand on my shoulder. Not a comforting hand, a restraining one. "Let her have it, babe," he said. "She's trying to build a career as an influencer. You can work at the kitchen table. It's bigger anyway." "But Grant, my blueprints." "Meredith, don't be jealous," he whispered, gaslighting me with ease. "Support her. She's fragile right now." I lost my office that day. I became a nomad in my own home, hunching over my laptop at the kitchen island while Jared ran circles around me, screaming at his iPad. Speaking of Jared, he was a terror. A 9-year-old boy who had never been told no in his life. He drew on my silk wallpaper with permanent marker. When I complained, Lorraine told me I was materialistic for caring about paper on a wall. He broke a $2,000 vase I had brought back from Italy. Kendra blamed me for putting it in a stupid place. I became the maid. I would wake up at 5 a.m. to clean the house because Lorraine complained if there was dust on the baseboards. I would work a 10-hour day, then come home to cook dinner for 5 people because Kendra didn't do stoves and Grant needed a hot meal. Dinner time was the worst. They would sit at the table, Grant at the head, Kendra to his right, laughing about inside jokes, talking about reality TV shows I didn't have time to watch. One night, I slapped a utility bill on the table. It was for $600. Who left the AC on with the windows open? I asked, exhausted. And who ordered $300 of pay-per-view movies? Kendra rolled her eyes, poking at the roast chicken I had spent 2 hours making. God, Meredith, all you talk about is money. It's so boring. Can't we have one peaceful meal? Grant nodded in agreement. She's right, Meredith. You're bringing the vibe down. I'll handle it later. He never handled it. I paid it. I always paid it. I started to notice things I ignored before. The way Grant's eyes lingered on Kendra's low-cut tops. The way they would disappear into the office together for hours, claiming they were working on her business plan. I would hear low laughter through the door. Are you crazy? Grant sneered when I asked why they needed to lock the door. You're disgusting, Meredith. She's your sister. You have a sick mind. I started to believe him. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe I was the problem. I was drowning in my own home, and the people holding me under were the ones I was fighting to keep afloat. The day my world shattered started with a deceptive calm. It was a Tuesday, the kind of crisp autumn morning that usually made me feel hopeful. I had a massive presentation scheduled for 10 a.m. with a luxury hotel chain, the biggest contract of my career. If I landed this, the commission would be enough to secure Holly's college fund entirely, and maybe, just maybe, enough to buy a small condo for just the two of us, a secret escape hatch I was beginning to dream about. I was in supermom mode. I woke up at 4:30 a.m., prepped meals for the parasites, ironed Grant's shirt, and got Holly ready for school. But Holly had a slight fever, just enough to keep her home but not enough to be alarming. Grant, I need you to watch Holly today, I said, rushing around the kitchen, packing my portfolio. The nanny called in sick. Just keep an eye on her. Make sure she rests. Keep Jared away from her, he plays too rough. Grant was sipping an espresso I had made him, scrolling through sports news. Don't worry, babe, he said, not looking up. I've got it under control. Go bring home the bacon. I kissed Holly on the forehead. She was sitting at the kitchen island, drawing a picture. Who's that? I asked, smoothing her hair. It's you, Mommy, she beamed, holding up a stick figure with a cape standing on top of a building. You're building a castle. I held back tears. I love you, baby. Be good for Daddy. I left the house feeling a knot in my stomach I couldn't explain, a primal instinct screaming turn back. But I pushed it down. I had to work. I had to provide. The meeting went perfectly. I crushed it. The CEO shook my hand, impressed by my vision. I walked out of that boardroom at 11:30 a.m. feeling a rare moment of triumph. I checked my phone. No missed calls. Then, at 11:32 a.m., my phone buzzed. Not a call. A notification from our smart home security system, motion detected, main staircase. Glass break sensor activated. I froze. I opened the app to check the camera feed, but the screen was black. Connection lost. I called Grant. Straight to voicemail. I called Kendra. Voicemail. I called the landline. Nothing. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced my chest. I ran to my car and drove like a maniac, weaving through traffic, running 2 red lights. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the wheel. When I burst through the front door, the house was eerily silent. No crying. No sirens. No TV. Just Grant, Kendra, and Lorraine standing in the foyer, arguing in hushed, frantic whispers. "Where is she?" I screamed, dropping my bag. "Where is Holly?" Grant stepped forward, blocking my view of the living room. He looked sweaty, his eyes darting around. "Meredith, calm down. She fell. She and Jared were playing on the stairs." I pushed past him with the strength of a linebacker. Holly was lying at the bottom of the grand curved staircase. She was curled in a ball, unmoving. Her favorite stuffed bunny was beside her, and her iPad, the one Jared always coveted, was smashed on the floor a few feet away. I fell to my knees beside her. "Holly? Baby? Mommy's here." She didn't answer. Her skin was clammy. A massive, purple bruise was forming on her temple, swelling visibly. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. "Why haven't you called 911? I shrieked, fumbling for my phone with trembling fingers. "Why is the ambulance not here?" "Wait, Meredith." Kendra grabbed my wrist, her nails digging into my skin. Her eyes were wide, but not with concern for Holly. With fear for herself. Jared didn't mean to push her. He just wanted the iPad. It was an accident. If you call the police or the ambulance, they'll ask questions. They might blame Jared. He's just a child. We can't have a record on him. I stared at her, my brain struggling to process the level of evil in front of me. You haven't called an ambulance because you're worried about Jared's record? My daughter is unconscious. We were just discussing the best way to handle it, Lorraine added smoothly, adjusting her pearls as if she were deciding on a dinner menu. We didn't want to cause a scene with the neighbors. Maybe we can just drive her ourselves? It looks like a little bump. She's probably just sleeping. Time. They had wasted precious time. Minutes that meant the difference between brain damage and recovery. They stood there debating liability while my daughter's brain was swelling against her skull. "Get away from me!" I screamed, a sound that tore my throat. I dialed 911. "My baby won't wake up." I yelled at the operator. "Send help. Now!" I stayed on the floor, cradling Holly's head, glaring at them. Grant tried to kneel beside me. "Meredith, Don't touch her," I hissed, baring my teeth like a wolf. "Don't you dare touch her. You chose your nephew over your daughter. You chose silence over her life." When the paramedics arrived, they were urgent. They intubated her right there on my Persian rug. As they loaded her onto the stretcher, one of the medics looked at me. "How long has she been down, ma'am?" I looked at Grant. He looked away. 20 minutes, I sobbed. Maybe 30. They didn't call. The medic's face hardened. He looked at Grant with pure disgust, then turned back to Holly. "Let's go." Code 3. As the ambulance doors closed, I knew. This wasn't an accident. This was a negligent homicide in slow motion. And the people responsible were the ones standing on my porch, looking worried about their reputation. Back in the hospital, after the slap, after I threatened to burn their world down, I didn't collapse. I wanted to. I wanted to curl into a ball and scream until my lungs burst. But adrenaline is a powerful anesthetic, and rage is a potent fuel. I walked to a quiet corner of the waiting room, near the vending machines that hummed with an irritating buzz. I sat down on the cold plastic chair and took a deep breath. I needed $50,000. Immediately. I pulled up my banking app again, just to be sure I hadn't hallucinated. Zero. Negative $40 in the checking account. Grant had drained everything. The savings, the checking, the emergency overdraft. Even Holly's college fund, a separate account I thought was secure, was empty. But money doesn't just vanish. You don't lose $200,000 on bad business in a month without a paper trail. I pulled out my laptop from my work bag. I always carried it. Grant was lazy with technology. He was the type of man who used the same password for everything, his birthday and his high school football jersey number, Grant 8212. He linked everything to our family cloud because he couldn't be bothered to manage storage. He thought I was too technologically challenged or too trusting to look. He was wrong. I wasn't challenged, I was loyal. And loyalty was dead. I logged into his cloud account. My hands were shaking, but my typing was steady. I went to the photos first. It was like opening a door to a parallel life. There they were. Not business trips to Chicago or Denver. Geotags in Cabo, Miami, Vegas. Photos of Grant and Kendra. Clinking champagne glasses in a jacuzzi. Kendra wearing a bikini I paid for. Grant wearing a Rolex I didn't know he owned. There was a video. I clicked play. It was dated 3 months ago. Grant was filming Kendra twirling in a hotel room suite. Who's the prettiest girl in the world? Grant's voice behind the camera. Me, obviously, Kendra giggled, falling onto the bed. When are you going to tell the dowdy designer to take a hike? Soon, baby. Once I cash out the company shares. We need to milk the cow a little longer. Milk the cow. That's what I was to him. Livestock. I felt bile rise in my throat, but I swallowed it down. I needed more. I needed financial proof. I checked his deleted emails. He hadn't emptied the trash. Amateur. There was an email chain with a shady offshore broker. Subject, liquidation. From Grant Harper. To Cayman Holdings. Liquidation of the joint savings is complete. Transfer the funds to the new LLC under KNG Ventures. Also, initiate the sale of the life insurance policy on my wife. I want to cash out the surrender value. He tried to cash out my life insurance. He was stripping me for parts. Then, I found a folder simply titled The Plan. Inside were Zillow listings for mansions in Beverly Hills. And a drafted document, a divorce settlement proposal that gave him full custody of Holly to avoid child support and possession of our house, citing my mental instability and workaholism as reasons. He was planning to gaslight me into an asylum and steal my daughter. The daughter he just let fall down the stairs. I took screenshots of everything. Every receipt, every text, every photo, every email. I uploaded them to a secure, encrypted server only I could access. I sent copies to a dummy email address I created right then and there. I looked up. Grant was across the room, buying a soda from the vending machine. He was laughing at something Kendra said. They looked relieved. They probably thought Holly wouldn't make it, saving them the trouble of the custody battle. I felt a coldness settle over me, a transformation. The Meredith who cooked dinners and apologized for existing was gone. In her place was someone else. Someone dangerous. I needed a weapon. And I knew exactly who had one. I scrolled through my contacts to a number I hadn't called in 3 years. Preston Sterling. Preston was a billionaire real estate mogul. I had designed his penthouse in Manhattan 3 years ago. He was tough, demanding, and notoriously difficult to please. He made grown men cry in meetings. But we had bonded over a shared obsession with detail and quality. He had once told me, "Meredith, you're the only person in this city who isn't trying to scam me. You have integrity. That's rare. If you ever need a favor, call." It was 11:45 p.m. I hit dial. He answered on the second ring. "Meredith?" Is everything all right? His voice was deep, commanding, yet surprisingly alert for the hour. Preston, I said, my voice steady, stripped of all emotion. I need to borrow $50,000. Tonight. Within the hour. For my daughter's brain surgery. There was a pause. No questions about how are you. Just business. Send me the hospital wiring instructions. The money will be there in 5 minutes. Thank you, I whispered, a single tear finally escaping. I will pay you back. I promise. Every cent. I know you will, he said. But tell me, Meredith, why isn't your investment banker husband paying for this? I took a deep breath, watching Grant open his soda. Because he spent it on his mistress. My sister. And he's trying to steal my company. Silence on the other end. A dangerous, heavy silence. Then, a sound I didn't expect. A low, dark chuckle. Meredith, Preston said, his tone shifting from friend to shark. Do you want to just save your daughter, or do you want to gut him like a fish? I looked at Grant's smiling face. Both, I said. I want to destroy them all. Good, Preston said. Meet me tomorrow morning at the St. Regis. I have a plan. And Meredith? Bring the screenshots. I stayed at Holly's bedside all night after the surgery team took her. The deposit cleared instantly, thanks to Preston. The surgery took 6 agonizing hours. When Dr. Eris finally came out at 6 a.m., looking exhausted, and told me she was stable, I finally let out the breath I had been holding for 18 hours. She was in a medically induced coma to let her brain heal, but she was alive. I told the nurse I had to leave for an hour to shower and get clothes. I lied. I took a cab straight to the St. Regis Hotel. I looked like a wreck, dried blood on my blouse, hair messy, eyes swollen. But when I walked into the penthouse suite, Preston Sterling didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me with respect. He was sitting on a velvet sofa, wearing a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up. A spread of breakfast was on the table, untouched. Coffee? He offered, handing me a porcelain cup without asking how I took it. He remembered. Black. I drank it. It tasted like bitter resolve. So, Preston sat across from me, opening a leather folder. I had my private investigator run a quick background check on your husband's recent activities since you called last night. It's sloppy, Meredith. It's offensive how sloppy he is. He slid a paper across the table. He's been trying to pitch a revolutionary investment fund to my associates for weeks, Preston said. He claims he's the silent partner behind your design firm. He's trying to leverage your reputation, my reputation, by association, to get a $5 million buy-in from private investors. He's running a Ponzi scheme. He's taking money to pay off gambling debts and buy luxury goods for your sister, hoping to land a whale investor to cover the holes before the house of cards collapses. He thinks I'm the whale, Preston continued, a cruel smile playing on his lips. He sent me a pitch deck 2 days ago. I was going to ignore it because I don't do business with amateurs. But now we use it, I said, catching on. The fog in my brain was clearing. Exactly. Preston stood up and walked to the window. You see, Meredith, men like Grant are driven by 2 things, greed and ego. He thinks he's smarter than you. He thinks he's smarter than me. We're going to use that against him. What's the plan? I asked. I'm going to express interest, Preston said. I'm going to call him. I'm going to tell him I love the proposal. I'm going to dangle a massive investment in front of him. A blue ocean opportunity. Exclusive. High return. But there's a catch. What catch? To enter this exclusive fund, the partner is required to show skin in the game. A substantial, good-faith capital injection to prove liquidity and commitment. I'm going to ask him for $500,000 cash within 48 hours. He doesn't have it, I said. He drained our accounts. He has assets, Preston corrected, turning to face me. Or rather, you do. The house. Your company shares. He will try to liquidate everything to get this money, thinking he's about to become a multi-millionaire. He will convince you to sign everything over. He thinks I'm stupid, I said, clenching my fists. He thinks I'm just a housewife who draws pretty pictures. Then play the part, Preston said, leaning forward, his eyes intense. Go back to him. Apologize for the slap. Be the submissive, scared wife who just wants her family back together. Tell him you talked to me and I liked his ideas. Let him think he's won. Let him think he's manipulating you into selling the house. And when he gets the money? I asked. He will transfer it to a holding company I control, Preston said. And once the money is there, I will freeze it. We will tie it up in litigation so complex his grandchildren won't be able to untangle it. He will be broke, homeless, and facing fraud charges when the other investors come looking for their money. It was dangerous. If I signed over the house and the company, and this went wrong, I would be homeless with a sick child. I looked at Preston. Why are you doing this? Why help me? Preston's face softened for a fraction of a second. Because 3 years ago, when I was going through my divorce and everyone was trying to rip me off, you returned a $10,000 overpayment on the invoicing. You didn't have to. You did it because it was right. Integrity is currency, Meredith. And right now, you're the richest woman I know. Let's bankrupt this bastard. I took a deep breath. Okay. Let's skin him alive. Legally speaking, Preston winked. I walked back into the hospital cafeteria with a performance prepared. I had washed my face, fixed my hair, and put on a mask of fragile exhaustion. Grant, Kendra, and Lorraine were sitting at a corner table, eating greasy burgers and laughing. The sight of them, fed, rested, and happy while Holly lay in a coma upstairs, made my stomach churn. But I shoved the rage down into the pit of my stomach. I needed to be an actress. I approached the table. They stopped talking immediately. Grant looked at me with wariness. Grant, I said, keeping my head down, my voice trembling just enough. I'm sorry. About last night. Grant blinked, surprised. Then, predictably, he puffed up like a rooster sensing weakness. Well, it was completely unacceptable, Meredith, he said, wiping ketchup from his mouth. You humiliated me. You humiliated your mother. You acted like a crazy person. I know, I sniffled, forcing a tear. I was just so scared about money. About Holly. But I fixed it. What do you mean you fixed it? Lorraine asked, narrowing her eyes. I called an old client last night, I whispered. He lent me the deposit. Grant's eyes narrowed. Which client? Preston Sterling, I said the name softly, like it was a prayer. Grant choked on his burger. He coughed violently, his face turning red. Preston Sterling? The billionaire? You talked to him? Personally? Yes, I nodded. He asked how you were doing. He mentioned he saw your proposal deck. The air in the room changed instantly. It crackled with sudden, intense greed. Grant exchanged a look with Kendra, a look that screamed jackpot. Lorraine sat up straighter. He said that? Grant stood up, ignoring his half-eaten food. He saw my proposal? What did he say? Did he like it? He said he was intrigued, I lied, weaving the web tighter. He said he's been looking for a partner with your vision. He's flying out to Dubai in 3 days for a summit, and he wants to close deals before he leaves. Grant was pacing now, energized, his earlier fatigue vanished. This is it. This is the big break. If I get in with Sterling, we are set for life. We're talking 10 million a year, easy. We're talking private jets, Meredith. 10 million? Kendra squealed, grabbing Grant's arm. Grant, baby, that's... She stopped herself, realizing she slipped up. That's great for the family. But Grant, I said, playing the worried, clueless wife. He mentioned something about a buy-in? A capital injection? Yes. Yes, of course. Grant waved his hand dismissively. You have to spend money to make money, Meredith. It's standard. But we don't have money, I said, my voice rising in fake panic. You said the accounts are empty. If he asks for money, we can't give it to him. We'll lose the chance. Grant stopped pacing. He looked at me, then at Lorraine, then at the imaginary millions floating above his head. I could see the gears turning. He was calculating how much he could squeeze out of me. We have equity, Meredith, he said slowly, walking over to me and placing his hands on my shoulders. We have the house. We have your company shares. No, I gasped, pulling away. Grant, the house is all we have. It's Holly's home. If we lose it, we won't lose it. He shook me slightly, his grip painful. Listen to me. This is a sure thing. Sterling is the real deal. You said it yourself, he lent you the money. He trusts us. We just need to mortgage the house, cash out the company equity, and put it into the deal. In a week, I'll have tripled it. I'll buy the house back cash. I'll buy you a bigger house. A better house. He looked into my eyes, lying through his teeth with the ease of a sociopath. I saw the calculation. He wasn't going to buy me a house. He was going to take the money, run off with Kendra and their son, and leave me with the debt and a sick child. I don't know, Grant, it's scary. Do you want to pay Sterling back for the surgery? He pressed, using my daughter as leverage. Do you want to secure Holly's future? Do you want to be a good mother, or do you want to let fear ruin us? Trust me, Meredith. I'm the man of the house. I know business. Let me take care of this. Lorraine chimed in. Meredith, don't be an obstacle to your husband's success. For once, do the right thing. I looked at them. The 3 people who were supposed to love me, circling like vultures. Okay, Grant, I whispered, looking down to hide the cold, hard glint in my eyes. I trust you. Let's do it. A shark smile spread across Grant's face. He kissed my forehead, and it made my skin crawl. Good girl, he said. I'll call the bank. We sign the papers tomorrow. I walked away toward the elevator, hiding the smirk that threatened to break through my mask. He had taken the bait. He had swallowed the hook, line, and sinker. Now, I just had to wait to reel him in and gut him. The trap was set, but before Grant could empty his pockets into my investment, I needed to drain him of his last drop of liquid cash and, more importantly, his dignity. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen where Lorraine was complaining about the quality of the coffee beans. I put on my best anxious but trying to please face. Mom, Grant, I said, wringing my hands. I was thinking, if we are going to meet Preston Sterling's associates to sign the deal, we need to look the part. You know how these billionaires are. They smell fear and they smell poverty. Lorraine perked up immediately. You're right, Meredith. Finally, you're making sense. I can't meet a billionaire wearing last season's earrings. It would be disrespectful to the family brand. Grant nodded, adjusting his tie. Image is everything. We need to project wealth to attract wealth. Great, I said, suppressing a smile. There's a private viewing at Leclet, that high-end jeweler downtown. Preston's personal jeweler is there. I set up an appointment. Maybe we should go? Just to, solidify the image. An hour later, we were standing in the hushed, velvet-lined showroom of Leclet. It was the kind of place where the door was locked behind you and champagne was served before you even looked at a price tag. Lorraine was in heaven. She swept through the store like a queen, pointing at diamonds with her manicured talons. I need something that says matriarch, she announced to the store manager, a man named Henri. Henri was actually a close contact of Preston's, briefed on exactly how to handle this client. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. Of course, madam, Henri purred. Perhaps this emerald choker? It is a favorite of the Duchess of York. $80,000. Lorraine gasped in delight. Oh, it brings out my eyes. Grant, look. Grant was sweating. I could see the moisture beading on his forehead. He knew his accounts were running on fumes, relying on credit lines he had already stretched thin. But Kendra was there, too, hanging on his arm, whispering in his ear. Get it for her, Grant, Kendra cooed. And look at this tennis bracelet for me. It's only $20,000. Think about the commission you're going to get next week. Grant swallowed hard. He looked at me. I looked away, pretending to admire a watch, letting him hang. Wrap them up, Grant said, his voice cracking slightly. We'll take them. Lorraine squealed. Kendra clapped. Jared, who had been dragging his sticky hands along the glass display cases, started running in circles around a pedestal displaying a massive, intricate jade horse sculpture. Henri rang up the total. That will be $105,000, sir. Grant pulled out his black Amex, the company card. The card for my design firm. My heart hammered. This was it. He swiped. Beep. Henri looked at the screen, then at Grant. I am sorry, sir. Declined. The silence in the room was louder than a scream. Lorraine froze. Kendra stopped chewing her gum. Try it again, Grant snapped, his face turning crimson. It's a platinum card. There's no limit. Henri swiped again. Beep. Insufficient funds, sir. And a card-frozen notification from the issuer. Grant looked at me, panic in his eyes. Meredith? Did you? I widened my eyes in fake shock. I didn't do anything. Maybe the bank flagged it because of the investment transfers you're setting up? Moving all that money around? Grant latched onto the excuse. Yes. Yes, that must be it. The assets are being liquidated for the Sterling deal. It triggered a fraud alert. Stupid banks. Lorraine looked furious. Well, fix it, Grant. I am not leaving without this necklace. It is already on my neck. While Grant was frantically calling the bank, who I knew wouldn't help him because I had reported the card stolen an hour ago, chaos erupted. Jared, bored with the tension, decided to play superhero. He jumped off a velvet ottoman, arms outstretched, screaming, I'm Superman. He crashed directly into the pedestal. It happened in slow motion. The pedestal tipped. The jade horse, a masterpiece Henri had told me was on loan from a museum, slid off its velvet mount. Crash. The sound of shattering jade was sickening. Green shards exploded across the marble floor. Jared started screaming immediately, not in pain, but in shock. Kendra rushed to him. My baby! Did you hurt yourself? Henri stepped over the debris, his face a mask of icy rage. He looked at the shattered sculpture, then at Grant. That sculpture was valued at $50,000, Henri said, his voice deadly calm. And you just destroyed it. It was an accident. Kendra yelled. You shouldn't have put it there. It's a safety hazard. Madam, this is a jewelry store, not a playground, Henri snapped. You are liable. Grant was still holding his phone, the bank on hold. He looked from the declined card machine to the pile of broken jade. He looked like a man drowning. I stepped forward. Oh my God. Grant, we have to pay for this. We can't have a lawsuit right before the sterling deal. It would ruin the background check. Grant looked at me, desperate. I can't, the card. I turned to Henri. Sir, my husband is expecting a massive liquidity event in 48 hours. Can he sign a promissory note? A personal liability agreement? He will pay for the damages and the jewelry. We just need 2 days. Henri pretended to consider it. He looked at Grant's expensive suit, then at the terrified look in his eyes. Fine, Henri said. But I will need a confession of judgment signed right now. If the funds are not wired within 48 hours, I will file criminal charges for destruction of property and theft of services. Grant signed. He signed with a shaking hand, sweating through his shirt. He signed away money he didn't have, to cover a debt he couldn't pay, to buy jewelry for women who didn't love him. As we walked out of the store, Lorraine clutching her necklace, Kendra dragging a crying Jared, I looked back at Henri. He gave me a wink. Grant was now $50,000 deeper in the hole, and terrified of the police. He was desperate. And a desperate man will sign anything. The atmosphere in our house that night was thick enough to choke on. The humiliation at the jewelry store had stripped away Grant's arrogance, leaving behind a raw, frantic desperation. He was like a cornered animal, and I was holding the only open door. The next morning, I sat at the dining room table with a stack of documents. These weren't just any papers, they were legal masterpieces drafted by Preston's team of sharks. Grant came downstairs, looking like he hadn't slept. His eyes were bloodshot. We have to do this today, Meredith, he said, pouring himself a whiskey instead of coffee. It was 9 a.m. I have to get that money to Sterling. The jeweler called. He said if the wire doesn't hit by tomorrow, he's calling the cops. I can't go to jail, Meredith. I can't. I looked at him, feigning sympathy. I know, Grant. I want to help. I really do. I pushed the papers toward him. This is the liquidation agreement, I said softly. It authorizes the immediate sale of the house to a private cash buyer, one of Preston's contacts who can close in 24 hours. And this is the transfer of your 40% equity in the design firm to me. Grant paused, his hand hovering over the pen. Wait. Why am I transferring my shares to you? I thought we were cashing them out. I took a deep breath, delivering the lie I had rehearsed in the mirror. Because, Grant, the bank won't release the equity cash loan if your name is on the shares. Your credit score took a hit because of the credit card decline yesterday. The underwriter flagged you as high risk. Grant bristled. High risk? Me? I'm the CEO. I know, babe, I said, reaching out to touch his hand. But the system is stupid. If you transfer the shares to me, just temporarily, I can pull the equity out under my name. My credit is clean. Then, once we get the sterling payout next week, I'll transfer them back. It's just a formality. A loophole. He hesitated. He looked at the paper. It was an irrevocable transfer of stock. It stripped him of all ownership in the company I had built. If he signed this, he was an employee. Actually, he was less than that, he was nobody. But the clock was ticking. The jewelry debt was hanging over his head like a guillotine. And the allure of the Blue Ocean Fund, the promised $10 million return, was blinding him. Kendra walked into the kitchen, wearing a silk robe I had paid for. Just sign it, Grant, she yawned, pouring orange juice. Stop being paranoid. Meredith is too stupid to screw you over. She doesn't even know how to use Excel properly. That stung, but it was useful. My incompetence was my camouflage. Grant looked at Kendra, then at the whiskey glass, then at me. You promise to transfer them back as soon as the deal closes? He asked. I promise, I said, crossing my fingers under the table. We're partners, remember? 50-50. He picked up the pen. He signed. I watched the ink dry. With that signature, he had just given me back my life's work. He had handed me the company. Now the house, I said, sliding the next document. This one was trickier. It was a quitclaim deed disguised within a stack of mortgage refinancing papers. It effectively removed him from the title of the house in exchange for a cash payout that would go directly into the Blue Ocean Fund. Grant signed page after page without reading the fine print. He was manic now, fueled by the proximity to the money. Done, he said, slamming the pen down. Wire the funds. Get the money to Sterling. I smiled. A real smile this time, though he interpreted it as support. I'll go to the bank right now. I drove straight to Preston's office. We didn't send the money to an investment fund. We didn't send it to Dubai. We followed the instructions on the documents Grant had just signed. The house was technically sold to a holding company owned by me, funded by a loan from Preston. The equity cash, about $400,000 that remained after the mortgage was paid, was wired into an escrow account named Blue Ocean Holdings. But Blue Ocean Holdings wasn't an investment firm. It was a shell LLC. And the sole signatory on that account? Meredith Harper. Grant had essentially sold the house, given me his company shares, and wired the proceeds into a bank account that only I could control. And he did it all thinking he was buying into a billionaires' club. When I got home that evening, Grant was popping a bottle of champagne. Lorraine and Kendra were looking at real estate listings for mansions in Malibu. To the future. Grant cheered, handing me a glass. To leaving the little people behind. I clinked my glass against his. To the future, I echoed. I took a sip. It was the best champagne I had ever tasted. Because I knew that in exactly 72 hours, the bomb was going to detonate. The next 3 days were a surreal study in human hubris. Grant walked around with a swagger I hadn't seen since our wedding day. He was rude to servers, dismissive of neighbors, and treated me with a pitying sort of kindness, like you would treat a dog you were planning to put down. Kendra had already started packing. Not packing to move with us, but packing the things she wanted to steal. I saw her putting my silver candlesticks into her suitcase. I didn't say a word. Let her take them. She would need something to pawn for bail money later. Then came Tuesday. The day the first dividend from the Blue Ocean Fund was supposed to hit. Grant was sitting at the kitchen table at 8 a.m., refreshing his banking app on his iPad. Lorraine was next to him, calculating how much a private chef would cost. It should be here any minute, Grant said, tapping the screen. Sterling said the wire initiates at 9 a.m. New York time. I sat across from them, drinking my black coffee. I checked my watch. 9:01 a.m. Grant frowned. Weird. It's not showing up. Maybe it's delayed? Kendra suggested. International wires take time, right? Grant called the number Preston had given him for the fund manager. It went straight to voicemail. A generic, robotic voicemail. He frowned deeper. He tried logging into the online portal Preston's team had set up for him, a dummy website that looked incredibly professional. He typed in his password. Grant 8212. Access denied. He typed it again. Harder. Account suspended. Please contact administrator. What's going on? Grant muttered, sweat starting to bead on his upper lip. Why can't I get in? I watched him. This was the moment. The crescendo. Suddenly, Grant's phone buzzed. A text message. Not from the bank. From the jeweler, Henri. Mr. Harper, the 48-hour window has expired. The wire for the damages has not been received. I am filing the police report and the confession of judgment with the court in 1 hour. Expect a visit from the sheriff. Grant turned pale. He looked at me. Meredith, call Sterling. Call him right now. The money hasn't hit, and the jeweler is threatening jail. I pulled out my phone. I didn't call Preston. I opened my email and pretended to read a notification. Oh my God, I whispered, covering my mouth. What? What is it? Lorraine shrieked. I looked up, tears of fake panic welling in my eyes. Grant. I just got an email from the SEC. The SEC? Grant stood up, knocking his chair over. It says Blue Ocean Holdings has been flagged for a massive Ponzi scheme investigation. All assets are frozen. The principals have fled the country. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. No, Grant whispered. No, no, no. That's impossible. Sterling is a billionaire. He's legitimate. Read it. I shoved the phone at him. I had forged the email myself the night before. Grant read the text, his hands shaking so hard he almost dropped the phone. Federal seized asset notice, indefinite freeze, investigation pending. It's gone, Grant croaked. The money. The house equity. The company shares. It's all gone? Lorraine stood up, clutching her chest. What do you mean gone? What about my necklace? What about the mansion? It's gone, Mother. Grant screamed, throwing the iPad across the room. It smashed against the wall, shattering just like his dreams. We've been scammed. It's all gone. We have nothing. Kendra looked at Grant with pure venom. You idiot. You told me this was a sure thing. You promised me millions. I trusted him. Grant yelled back, pointing at the phone. I trusted Meredith's client. This is your fault, Meredith. You introduced us. I stood up slowly. My voice was calm. Cold. My fault? I asked. You're the financial genius, Grant. You're the one who leveraged the house. You're the one who signed over the company. You're the one who stole my daughter's surgery money to play big shot. And now? Now you're broke. Actually, Grant said, a wild look in his eyes. Not totally broke. We still have the house. We can take out a second mortgage. We can. No, Grant, I interrupted. You sold the house. Remember? You signed the deed 3 days ago. The new owners, well, they want you out. Grant looked at me, his face turning a shade of purple I had never seen before. Who are the new owners? I checked my watch. 9:15 a.m. Right on cue, the doorbell rang. I walked to the door and opened it. 2 uniformed police officers stood there. Behind them was a man in a suit, a process server. Grant Harper? The officer asked, stepping into the foyer. Grant stumbled into the hallway, looking like a ghost. Why, yes. We have a warrant for your arrest regarding grand larceny and destruction of property at Leclet Jewelers. And we have an eviction notice for the occupants of this residence. Eviction? Lorraine screeched. This is my house. Not anymore, the process server said, handing Grant a thick stack of papers. The property is now owned by Phoenix Rising LLC. You have 24 hours to vacate. Grant looked at the papers. He looked at the officers. Then he looked at me. Meredith, do something. Tell them. Fix this. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. I can't fix this, Grant. I'm just a stupid housewife who doesn't know how to use Excel. Remember? The realization hit him. He looked into my eyes and saw the abyss. He saw the trap. But it was too late. The officers grabbed his arms. Grant Harper, you have the right to remain silent. As they dragged him out, screaming about lawyers and mistakes, I turned to Kendra and Lorraine. They were huddled in the corner, terrified. Get packing, I said. You have 24 hours. And don't take the silverware. I counted it. The house was quieter with Grant in a holding cell, but the stench of betrayal still lingered in the form of my sister and mother. They were frantically packing, throwing clothes into garbage bags, arguing over whose fault this was. But I wasn't done. Grant was down, but Kendra? Kendra needed a special kind of lesson. Kendra had always thrived on attention. She lived for the validation of strangers on the internet and the envy of the mommy group in our upscale neighborhood. She had spent years cultivating an image of a wealthy, successful single mom, even though she was living off my charity. I sat down at my kitchen island with a glass of wine and opened my laptop. It was time to destroy her reputation. I logged into the neighborhood social app, Nextdoor, and the private Facebook group for the local PTA groups where Kendra was surprisingly active, mostly bragging about her lifestyle. I composed a post. Simple. Factual. Devastating. Title, A Warning to the Neighborhood. Attached, screenshots of the text messages between Grant and Kendra. The pregnancy test photo from the hospital. The eviction notice. Text, to my neighbors and friends. I am heartbroken to announce that I will be staying in the community, but my husband Grant Harper and my sister Kendra will be leaving. As many of you know, my daughter Holly is fighting for her life after a fall caused by negligence. While I was at the hospital, I discovered that my husband and sister have been having an affair for 2 years and are expecting a child together. They drained our accounts, including Holly's medical fund, to finance their life. Grant has been arrested for fraud. Kendra is currently looking for a new place to live. Please be careful who you let into your homes. I hit post. The reaction was nuclear. Within 10 minutes, my phone was buzzing with notifications. OMG Meredith, I am so sorry. Kendra? The one who judges everyone's outfits? She's sleeping with her brother-in-law? Disgusting. Blocked. But that wasn't enough. I needed to hit her where it hurt, her wallet. I forwarded the entire dossier, the affair, the pregnancy, the financial theft, to Kendra's ex-husband, Mike. Mike was a decent guy who had been fleeced by Kendra during their divorce. He was paying her massive alimony and child support because she claimed she couldn't work due to anxiety. I added a note, Mike, thought you should know she's cohabitating with my husband and they have shared finances. Also, she's pregnant. According to your divorce decree, cohabitation ends alimony. Also, her negligence led to Holly's injury. You might want to petition for full custody of Jared before she drags him down with her. I sent it. 2 hours later, Kendra came storming into the kitchen, her face streaked with mascara tears. She held her phone like a weapon. What did you do? She screamed. Mike just called his lawyer. He's cutting off my alimony. He's filing for emergency custody of Jared. He says I'm an unfit mother. I took a sip of wine. Are you fit, Kendra? You watched my daughter fall down the stairs and worried about your son's record instead of her brain. You posted it online. She shrieked. My Instagram comments are flooded. People are calling me a homewrecker. I'm losing followers by the second. I have brand deals, Meredith. They're canceling me. I shrugged. Cancellation is a bitch, isn't it? Maybe you should have thought about that before you slept with my husband in my bed. She lunged at me. Actually lunged. But I didn't flinch. I just held up my phone. I'm recording, Kendra. Assaulting me right now will violate your probation for that DUI you tried to hide last year. Go ahead. Make my day. She froze. Her hands curled into claws, shaking. She looked at me with pure hatred, but beneath it, I saw fear. She realized, for the first time in her life, that I wasn't the doormat anymore. I was the wall she was crashing into. I have nowhere to go. She sobbed, switching tactics to manipulation. I'm pregnant. You can't kick a pregnant woman out on the street. I stood up and walked over to her. I leaned in close. You're not my sister anymore, Kendra. You're just the woman who stole my husband and tried to kill my daughter. The shelter downtown opens at 6 p.m. I'd suggest you get in line. She collapsed onto the floor, wailing. It was the sound of a spoiled child realizing the candy store had burned down. And I felt absolutely nothing. With Grant in jail and Kendra sobbing in her room, there was one loose end left. The matriarch. The enabler. Lorraine. Lorraine was in the master bedroom, my master bedroom, packing her designer clothes into Louis Vuitton trunks. She was muttering to herself, cursing Grant for being useless and me for being vindictive. She still didn't understand. She thought this was just a financial setback. She thought she could just move on to the next host. I leaned against the doorframe. You know, Mom, those trunks won't fit in an Uber. And Grant's car has been repossessed. Lorraine didn't look up. I'll call a private car. I have some savings. I'm going to stay at the Ritz until this blows over. You're being incredibly harsh, Meredith. Kicking your own mother out. I laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. You're not a mother, Lorraine. A mother protects her cubs. You fed yours to the wolves because you wanted a shiny necklace. Speaking of the necklace, she touched her throat. It was still there. The diamond choker from Leclet. You have to return that, I said. Grant didn't pay for it. It's stolen property. Lorraine clutched it. I will not. It was a gift. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Not when the credit card declines, Mom. Before we could argue further, there was a heavy knock at the front door. Not the rhythmic knock of a visitor, but the authoritative pounding of the law. I went downstairs. It was the police again. Different officers this time. Meredith Harper? The officer asked. Yes. We're looking for a Lorraine Miller. We have a warrant for her arrest. My heart skipped a beat. I knew this was coming. She's upstairs, I said, stepping aside. May I ask what the charge is? Grand larceny, the officer said, adjusting his belt. The security footage from Leclet Jewelers shows her slipping a Rolex watch into her purse while her son-in-law was arguing about the credit card. Value is $25,000. I closed my eyes and smiled. Of course she did. Greed is a reflex for her. The officers went upstairs. A moment later, I heard the screaming. Get your hands off me. Do you know who I am? Meredith. Meredith, tell them. It was a mistake. I was holding it for safekeeping. They dragged her down the stairs in handcuffs. She looked disheveled, her wig slightly askew, the diamond necklace still sparkling mockingly around her neck. Meredith! She screamed, seeing me standing in the hallway. Call the lawyer. Bail me out. You have money. Use the company money. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had told me to give up my scholarship. The woman who told me my daughter wasn't worth saving. The woman who stole from me for 30 years. "I'm sorry, Lorraine," I said calmly. "I can't bail you out." "Why not?" she shrieked as they pushed her out the door. "Because," I said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "I have to save my money for the living." "Isn't that what you taught me?" The door slammed shut. The silence that followed was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I was alone in the house. The parasites were gone. Grant was in jail. Kendra was broke and homeless. Lorraine was behind bars. I walked into the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. I sat in the silence, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. For the first time in 2 years, the air in the house felt clean. But I wasn't done. The final act was yet to come. Grant would make bail. Preston warned me that his lawyer was slippery. He would come for the company. He would come for the last thing he thought he could control. I needed to be ready for the boardroom. 2 days later, Grant managed to make bail. I knew he would. He probably called in favors from his shady gambling buddies or pawned his watch. But he was out. And I knew exactly where he would go. Not to the house. He knew the locks were changed and the eviction notice was real. No, he would go to the only place he thought he still had power. My design firm. Harper and Company. He didn't know I had legally tricked him into signing over his shares. He thought that was just a temporary formality to get the loan. He thought he could storm in, fire me, liquidate the company assets, and run with the cash. I was waiting for him. I sat at the head of the conference table in the glass-walled boardroom. I was wearing a suit I hadn't worn in years, sharp, tailored, blood-red. To my right sat Preston Sterling. To my left, my corporate attorney, a woman named Sarah who had eyes like a hawk. The entire staff was outside, nervous. I had briefed them, let him in. Watch the show. At 10 a.m., the elevator doors dinged. Grant stormed in. He looked terrible. He was wearing the same suit he was arrested in, now rumpled and stained. He hadn't shaved. He looked like a madman. "Where is she?" he roared, marching past the reception desk. "Meredith!" He burst into the boardroom. He slammed his hands on the table, glaring at me. "You bitch," he spat. "You locked me out of the house? You let my mother rot in jail? You think you've won?" I didn't flinch. I took a sip of water. "Hello, Grant. You look tired. Jail doesn't suit you." "Cut the crap," he yelled. "I'm here to take what's mine. I'm the CEO of this company. I own 40% of the shares. I'm firing you, Meredith. Effective immediately. Get out of my chair." He looked at Preston. "And you, Sterling. You scammed me. You and your fake investment fund. I'm going to sue you for every penny." Preston leaned back, looking bored. "Mr. Harper, please. Lower your voice. You're disturbing the peace." Grant laughed, a manic sound. "Disturbing the peace? I'm going to burn this place down." "Sarah!" He pointed at the lawyer. "Draw up the liquidation papers. We're selling the firm. I need cash today." Sarah adjusted her glasses. She didn't look at Grant. She looked at me. "Grant," I said calmly. "You can't liquidate the company. Watch me. I'm the majority shareholder when combined with my mother's proxy." "No, you're not," I said. "You're not a shareholder at all." Grant paused. "What are you talking about?" "I signed those transfer papers temporarily. You promised to transfer them back. I promised? I raised an eyebrow. I don't recall that being in writing. Sarah, is there a buyback clause in the share transfer agreement Mr. Harper signed? Sarah opened a file folder. No, Ms. Harper. The document is an irrevocable transfer of all Class A equity units from Grant Harper to Meredith Harper. It was a gift. There are no conditions attached. Grant's face went white. No. No! That's fraud. You tricked me. Tricked you? I stood up. You signed it, Grant. You were so desperate to get money for your Blue Ocean investment that you didn't even read what you were signing. You sold your birthright for a bowl of soup that didn't even exist. Grant lunged for the papers in Sarah's hand, but Preston stood up. Preston was 6'2" and built like a linebacker. He blocked Grant's path effortlessly. Sit down, Grant, Preston growled. Before I throw you out the window. Grant collapsed into a chair. He looked defeated. But then, a spark of malice returned to his eyes. Fine, he sneered. Take the company. It's worthless anyway without my connections. But you forgot one thing, Meredith. The money. The cash from the house sale. The $400,000. I wired that to Blue Ocean Holdings. If that fund is a scam, then the money is gone for you too. You're just as broke as I am. He started laughing. I burned it all down. If I can't have it, nobody can. I smiled. A slow, genuine smile. Oh, Grant. You really didn't do your due diligence, did you? What? He stopped laughing. Blue Ocean Holdings isn't a scam, I said. Well, not exactly. I nodded at Sarah. She pulled out another document and slid it across the table to Grant. Grant looked at it. It was the Articles of Incorporation for Blue Ocean Holdings LLC. Grant read the line at the bottom. Sole member and manager, Meredith Harper. His eyes bulged. He looked up at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. You, he whispered. You own Blue Ocean? I leaned over the table. Yes, Grant. You didn't wire the money to a Ponzi scheme. You wired it to me. You sold my house, and you deposited the check directly into my private bank account. Thank you for the donation. It will cover Holly's recovery beautifully. Grant stared at me. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He hadn't been scammed by a stranger. He had been outplayed by the wife he thought was stupid. You set me up, he choked out. I didn't set you up, Grant. I just gave you enough rope. You're the one who tied the noose. The boardroom was silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning and Grant's ragged breathing. He stared at the document in front of him, the paper trembling in his hands. The reality of his situation was settling in. He wasn't just broke, he had legally gifted me everything he tried to steal. He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw true fear. Not the panic of getting caught, but the terror of total defeat. But Grant wasn't done. He was a narcissist, and narcissists never go down without trying to destroy the mirror. His face twisted into a snarl. He stood up, knocking the chair backward. You think you're so smart, Meredith? He shouted, spit flying. You think this piece of paper matters? I'm still your husband. I still have rights. Marital assets. Everything you have is half mine. I'll drag this out in court for years. I'll make sure the lawyers eat up every cent of that money. You won't see a dime for Holly's care. He pointed a shaking finger at me. And speaking of Holly, I'm going for custody. I'll paint you as an unstable, vindictive harpy. I'll tell the judge you manipulated a mentally distressed man. I'll take her, Meredith. And I'll let Kendra raise her. The room gasped. Sarah, my lawyer, stiffened. Preston clenched his fists. But I remained calm. This was the moment I had prepared for. The final nail. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I tossed it onto the table. It landed with a heavy thud. Go ahead, Grant, I said, my voice ice cold. Sue me. But before you call your lawyer, you might want to look at what's in there. He glared at me, then ripped the envelope open. Photos spilled out. The photos of him and Kendra in Cabo. The text messages calling Holly a lost cause. The email to the offshore broker trying to sell my life insurance policy. The forged financial statements he used to try and trick Preston. And one more thing. A USB drive. What is this? Grant whispered, his bravado flickering. That drive contains the audio recording from the hospital waiting room, I said. The moment you admitted to refusing payment for Holly's surgery to save money for your new son. It also contains the security footage from the house, showing Kendra pushing Holly down the stairs. Or rather, Jared pushing her while Kendra watched and did nothing. Grant's face drained of all color. Negligence. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Attempted insurance fraud. And let's not forget the big one. I motioned to the door. 2 men in suits walked in. Not police this time. FBI. Grant Harper? Agent Miller asked. We have a warrant for your arrest for wire fraud and money laundering. We've been tracking your offshore activities for months. Your recent transfer to the Blue Ocean account triggered our sensors. We thought it was a laundering scheme, but it turns out, your wife helped us catch you in the act. Grant looked at the agents, then back at me. You called the feds? He squeaked. I didn't have to, I said. Preston did. When you sent him that fraudulent pitch deck, he was legally obligated to report it. You tried to scam a billionaire, Grant. Did you really think he wouldn't check your math? The agents moved in, pulling Grant's hands behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was the most satisfying sound in the world. Meredith! Grant screamed, struggling. Baby, please. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. I love you. Tell them to stop. We can work this out. I walked around the table and stood right in front of him. I looked into the eyes of the man I had wasted 10 years on. You don't love me, Grant. You love what I provided. And now, the service has been terminated. They dragged him toward the door. As he passed the glass wall, the entire staff of my company stood up and watched. He was humiliated. Utterly, completely destroyed. Before the door closed, I looked at the camera, at you, my friends who have listened to this nightmare. I took a deep breath. My hands were finally steady. Grant is going to prison. My company is safe. My daughter's future is secured. But I know this feeling, the feeling of being gaslit, used, and discarded. I know many of you are sitting there right now, feeling the same way. If you are still here, if you've walked this dark path with me to the light, I need you to do one thing. Like this video and comment the number 1 below. Let me know that justice still matters. Let me know that we, as women, are stronger than the parasites who try to drain us. Your one tells me that I did the right thing. It tells me that you are with me. Please, comment 1 now, and let's finish this story together. The days following Grant's arrest were a blur of legal motions and media frenzies. The story of the Ponzi husband broke on the local news, and suddenly, everyone who had turned a blind eye to Grant's behavior came out of the woodwork to claim they always knew something was off. But the real tragedy, and the final satisfaction, came in the form of Kendra. 3 days after Grant was taken into federal custody, I was at the hospital sitting with Holly. She was awake now, weak but responsive. The doctors were optimistic. The swelling had gone down, and she recognized me. "Hi, Mommy," she had whispered that morning. It was the best conversation of my life. I walked out to the hallway to get a coffee, and there she was. Kendra. She looked unrecognizable. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a stained tracksuit. Her hair was greasy. She looked 10 years older. She was sitting on the floor of the hospital corridor, hugging her knees. When she saw me, she scrambled up. "Meredith," she croaked. Her voice was hoarse. I stopped. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. "Meredith, please," she begged, reaching out a hand but pulling it back when she saw my expression. "I have nowhere to go." Mike took Jared. He got an emergency order. He won't let me see my son. "Good," I said. "Jared deserves a stable home. And Grant, he's gone. The Fed seized everything in his name. I'm broke, Meredith. I haven't eaten in 2 days. And the baby." She touched her stomach. I think something is wrong. I'm cramping. I'm scared. Please, Meredith. You're my sister. Help me. Just a few $100s. A hotel room. Anything. I looked at the woman who had laughed when my daughter fell. The woman who had planned to move into my house and raise her child with my money while Holly rotted in a state facility. I felt a flicker of pity. It was human nature. But then I looked through the glass window of the ICU. I saw Holly's bandaged head. I opened my purse. Kendra's eyes lit up with hope. I pulled out a card. It wasn't a credit card. It was a business card for a social worker at the local women's shelter. "Go here," I said, handing it to her. "They have medical staff. They can check the baby. And they can help you get a job." Kendra stared at the card. You're not giving me money?" "No," I said. "Money is what ruined you, Kendra. You've never worked a day in your life. You've leeched off Mom, off Mike, off Grant, off me. It's time to grow up." "Meredith!" she screamed, throwing the card on the floor. "You heartless bitch. I'm carrying your niece or nephew." I stepped over the card. "I hope you are. And I hope, for that child's sake, you learn how to be a mother before it's born. Because if you treat that baby the way you treated Holly, I will call CPS myself." I turned and walked back into Holly's room. I closed the door. Through the glass, I saw Kendra stand there for a moment, screaming at the air, before security came and escorted her out. It wasn't a happy ending for her. But it was the ending she wrote for herself. Grant was facing 20 years. Kendra was on the street. Lorraine was awaiting trial for grand larceny. And me? I was sitting in a plastic chair, holding my daughter's hand, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely, terrifyingly free. 1 year later. The ocean breeze was warm against my face as I stood on the balcony. Not the balcony of the ostentatious mansion Grant had forced us to buy, but the balcony of a beautiful, sun-drenched beach house in Santa Barbara. I had bought it with the proceeds from the Blue Ocean Fund, my own money, recovered and repurposed. Holly ran past me, laughing, chasing a golden retriever puppy we had named Lucky. "Careful, sweetie," I called out. "I'm okay, Mom," she yelled back. She was running. No limp. No lasting damage. The scar on her temple was hidden under her hair, a battle wound she was proud of. Life had changed in ways I couldn't have imagined. The design firm was thriving. Without Grant draining the accounts, we had expanded. I hired Sarah, my shark lawyer, as in-house counsel. We were untouchable. Grant was 6 months into a 15-year sentence. He sent me letters at first, angry ones, then begging ones. I burned them unopened. Kendra, well, I heard through the grapevine she had moved to Nevada. She lost custody of the baby she was carrying to the state due to substance issues. It was tragic, but it wasn't my tragedy to fix anymore. I turned around as the glass door slid open. Preston walked out, holding 2 glasses of iced tea. He looked different out of a suit. Relaxed. Happy. Thinking about the past? He asked, handing me a glass. I smiled, taking it. No. Thinking about the future. Preston leaned against the railing next to me. We hadn't rushed into anything. We spent months just being friends, partners in rebuilding my life. But lately, the lines were blurring in the best way possible. You know, Preston said, looking at the ocean. I have a new project coming up in Italy. A villa restoration. I need a lead architect. Someone with vision. Someone I trust. I looked at him. Italy? Holly would love the gelato, he added, smiling. I looked at my daughter playing in the sand. I looked at the man who had handed me a lifeline when I was drowning. I think I'm ready for a new project, I said softly. He reached out and took my hand. No contracts this time, Meredith. Just us. Just us, I agreed. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. It was messy, chaotic, and beautiful. Just like my life. I had walked through the fire, and I hadn't just survived. I had been forged. I want to leave you with this. When I look back at the woman I was in that hospital waiting room, the woman begging her husband for money that was rightfully hers, I almost don't recognize her. She was small. She was scared. She believed that love meant sacrifice, even if it meant sacrificing her own soul. We are taught, as women, to be the fixers. To be the peacemakers. To smooth over the cracks in our families with our own bodies so no one else trips. We make excuses for the mothers who criticize us, the sisters who use us, the partners who drain us. We tell ourselves it's duty. We tell ourselves it's love. But let me tell you something I learned in the hardest way possible: you cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Grant, Kendra, Lorraine, they didn't destroy me because they were powerful. They destroyed me because I gave them the power. I handed them the matches. If you are listening to this, and you feel that familiar knot in your stomach, that feeling that you are giving too much, that you are invisible in your own life, please, listen to the alarm bells. Check the accounts. Trust your gut. And most importantly, draw the line. It is not selfish to protect your peace. It is not selfish to secure your future. It is not selfish to demand respect. I lost a husband. I lost a sister. I lost a mother. But I found myself. And I found my daughter. And that trade? I would make it 1,000 times over. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for walking this road with me. You are stronger than you know. You are valuable. And you are never, ever alone. This is Meredith Harper, signing off. Take care of yourselves, and remember, the only person who can save you is you. And so, as Meredith's journey comes to a close, we are left with a profound reminder of the resilience that lies within us all. Her story is not just about betrayal, loss, or even revenge. It is a testament to the power of self-worth and the courage to reclaim it. Life often tests us in unimaginable ways, but it is in these moments of darkness that we discover the strength to rise, to rebuild, and to redefine who we are. Meredith's triumph wasn't in destroying those who wronged her, but in finding her voice, protecting her daughter, and proving to herself that she deserved better. This story also challenges us to reflect on the relationships we nurture and the boundaries we set. It teaches us that love without respect is not love at all, and that sacrificing your peace for the sake of others is never the answer. True strength lies in knowing when to let go, when to stand firm, and when to choose yourself over the expectations of others. Meredith's journey shows us that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, it is never too late to take control of your life and write a new chapter. What about you? What did this story awaken in you? If you found value in this lesson of resilience and self-discovery, share your thoughts below or simply comment good to let others know that strength and hope always prevail. Together, let's honor the power of perseverance and the courage to choose ourselves.